I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all up, you know. I control, you don't know, babe. I'm a danger to myself. I control, you don't.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. So how are you guys doing today? I hope you guys have had a wonderful week so far. We are nearing the end of it. Tomorrow's Friday. Yippee. Not that it matters to me or some of us, because weekends are just another day. Gotta work every day. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about Bob Saget. And I wasn't originally going to cover this, even though I do tend to like to cover some, current events. I wasn't going to, because at the time I thought it was a very cut and dry death. However, now I am starting to see some things that look very disturbing, as other people also are noticing as well. As more and more information comes out, there are more and more questions that some of us are having. So, and now I know another reason I wasn't going to do anything on Bob Saget was because I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding him in particular. Accusations of him being inappropriate with young children, a very raunchy sense of humor, and comedy skits and comedy acts are very disturbing in content when it kind of involves children. And so, personally, I grew up watching Bob Saget in Full House. I am Stephanie's age, and I just love that show. I remember the TGIF lineup every Friday night. It was like, make popcorn, get some snacks, and I would go downstairs and I'd watch the whole lineup. It had Family Matters, Perfect Strangers, I don't know, but my favorite was Full House, obviously. It's, girls, and I was a little girl too, so, I grew up watching that. My kids started watching that, and then Fuller House came out. My kids would watch Fuller House. So that's the Bob Saget that I am familiar with. I also watched, too, growing up, America's Funniest Home Videos, and I just thought he was a funny guy, a quirky but funny guy. I never knew about any of these allegations about him until many years later, actually quite recently, while watching a roast that they did about him, and all the jokes were about him being sexually fixated on children, and I was like, what? And it was about that. It was about RAPE, and jokes about the Olsen twins, and I felt like the people that were doing the roast were inappropriate, and they were the messed up ones, because if they thought it was funny and they found humor in this, because everybody's laughing and hooting and hollering, and even the cast of Full House, some of the cast of Full House was there, and they were all laughing at the jokes as well. I don't know. I feel like jokes about children in a sexual manner are just not okay. But I don't know. I always say to each their own, whatever, but I don't think that shit's funny. I don't find any humor in any of that. I find it disgusting. And the fact that the entire roast was basically about Bob Saget and small children, including the children that he worked with for years, I thought the people doing the roast were kind of not okay for doing that. I don't know. But, however, since his passing, the cast of Full and Fuller House has had nothing but amazing words for Bob Saget and the type of man that he was. So, many of them have said that he was the most decent, kindest, loving, generous human being that they've ever known. He was full of love and care for anyone that was important to him, which was pretty much anyone he met and knew for long enough. He was very, very sweet and funny and caring and, just giving So, and even Mary Kate and Ashley, who that roast was a lot of nasty stuff was said, they said, we know he will always be by our side and guiding us as gracefully as he always has. Candace Cameron Bure, or however you say her new last name, he said he was the greatest human being I've ever known, you know? So nobody who really knew him well had anything negative to say about him at all. It was like, just what an amazing person he was, what an amazing human being he was. And so I don't know. But I'm not going to get into that. That's not what this video is about. This video is about the mystery surrounding Bob Saget's death. Now, the death investigation has been closed. It's been ruled an accident. But in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, especially now that more information has come out, these injuries look very suspicious. Sus AF. January 9th, 2022. Bob Saget was found unresponsive in Orlando, Florida at the Ritz-Carlton in his hotel room in bed under the covers. He had arranged a late checkout time of 3 p.m., but security went to his room after he failed to check out, and family could not get in touch with him. His room was clean, his bags were packed, and they were ready by the door. So he was ready to go, like, get up, get ready, and he was all good to go. All revival attempts failed, and he was pronounced dead. It was said there were no signs of foul play. His left arm was found draped across his chest, leaving many people to incorrectly assume that he had had a heart attack. He also had recently had COVID, though he was vaccinated. He said he was quite ill from it, but he had recovered. He was feeling fine, and he was back to normal. There were no drugs or alcohol found in his toxicology report. What was found and to be the cause of death was blunt trauma to the head from a fall, and it was ruled an accident. Now, the family is okay with that. They've accepted that, and they want everything closed, and they want to move on. But they're also suing to keep everything private. And why, I don't know. I obviously, I can see some reason why. They don't want photos out. They don't want all these medical records out. They don't want, but at the same time, why? Now knowing what we know and what I'm about to tell you, why? Because this lawsuit just came out yesterday. So, and we found all this other stuff out the day before yesterday. So why would they not want to know more? I don't know. So there have been rumors. There have been rumors that he hit his head on a headboard. However, Inside Edition went into the room that Bob Saget was found in, and the whole back of the wall behind the bed is padded. So it's not even like a headboard. The whole wall is just like this pretty padded, fluffy wall. Not fluffy, but a padded wall. So that is definitely ruled out. The bathroom was all marble, though, and so was the shower. And there was a marble side table next to the bed. So what police believe is that he fell in the bathroom and hit his head on either the marble floor, the sink, something in there. It was all marble, and so was that side table. So no one ever really said much about that. But that's a place that he also could have possibly hit, the front of his head. It's just, none of this makes sense, you guys. So I'm just, reporting what I know, and we'll see. We'll see what everyone thinks. So he had a comedy show that night that he performed at. He had a comedy show the night before as well. And so this was his last show in Florida, and he was ready to leave the next day. And he got back to his room at about 2:17 a.m. He did post a selfie, and he also took a picture with a fan outside of the hotel before coming in. But he was back in his room at 2:17. That's when the door card report showed him re-entering his room. When they found him in the morning, or when they came to check on him in the morning, they had to they said the door was manually locked from the inside. So I'm assuming that's that little flipper, not chain, but they have the flipper. I don't know why I call it a flipper, but it you know, locks it from the inside just as extra security. So I'm assuming that that's what they meant, because they had to get that unlocked. So it kind of points that nobody else was in the room with him, because how would that flipper be flipped if someone had done something to him and then left? You know, how did the door get locked? Which if he was lucid after everything, then he could have locked the door, but who would be... Well, let's just keep going here. Let's just keep going, because it needs to make sense to you. So that's what I'm trying to do. So another interesting thing, there's no surveillance. There's no surveillance of anything. There's no one asking to see surveillance of anything. And I can understand that if what was originally reported was all that ever came of this. However, now other doctors have reviewed these findings and they have different opinions. I came across a neurosurgeon who weighed in on subdural hematomas. His name is Dr. Martin Rakowski, and he's a professor in neurosurgery, and he's also a neurosurgeon himself. And based on what is public, he actually made 2 videos. The first video he made was just going into a subdural hematoma, what it is, and whether or not it's possible that you can get that from the type of fall that they're saying that Bob Saget had. And then he made a second video, which we will get into after. So the cause of death being a subdural hematoma, what is that? What is a subdural hematoma? It's a collection of blood in the subdural space, creating pressure that can cause someone to fall into a coma and eventually pass away. Blood thinners can increase this, and also age. So basically, anyone can get a subdural hematoma from falling, a blow to the head, things like the very severe blows to the head, I may add. But, you know, boxers can get these injuries. If you get in a fight, you can get this type of injury. If you fall off your bike hard enough, you could probably get this type of injury. Usually they are small, but they can be larger. And then that would be even more force, you know, trauma to the head that would cause that. And blood thinners can increase this because they increase the flow of blood. So if the blood is starting to pool and you're taking a blood thinner, you're going to bleed more. So the subdural hematoma would be bigger, and therefore more needing to be you would need to definitely get to that a lot sooner than a smaller bleed. So was he taking any blood thinners? I don't know. Also, age was an issue too. Someone in their 20s who falls off of a bike and really slams their head good may have a small, subdural hematoma, but someone who's in their 60s or 70s that falls off their bike, the bleed would be maybe much more severe. So he's in his 60s. Does he take blood thinners? We don't know. The force, though, that it takes to create a subdural hematoma is quite drastic. They're typically the result of a car accident, unhelmeted sports or recreational activities, or direct blows to the head. So like I said, you're out riding a 4-wheeler without a helmet. You're riding a motorcycle without a helmet. You're in a severe car accident, where your head can hit the steering wheel and the window, very, very, a lot of strength behind this type of injury, in most cases. So did he take meds that would cause this? We don't know. We don't know about that. But being that he went and laid in bed and even covered himself, shows that he was lucid enough to get into bed, which is odd with a, subdural hematoma. Although if it's a very small bleed, that can happen. I'm always worried when my kids hit their head or anything, especially when they're little, that they'll seem fine and then 3 hours later they're not going to be fine. It happens a lot with toddlers and babies. If they fall, a lot of times they can appear okay and then they're not okay, or they don't ever wake up, or it's terrifying just to be a parent in general. So I am familiar with what these are. There are things that I've been afraid of happening, so I've researched them. Anything I want to know, I'm researching it. I'm a digger, that's for sure. That's for sure. So let's move on here, because we get off topic quite a bit on my channel, and I really do apologize for it. So Also, it could have been an epidural hematoma, which is blood that pools for a significant amount of time leading to coma death. That's more of like one that, you know, you can have that bleed and maybe it takes a day or two for that to happen. But we know that that's not the case for Bob Saget. So most of these epidural hematomas are small and can be surgically treated if caught early, as well as the subdural hematomas. So now we know about that. Now there are these updated autopsy results, right? That have just come out a couple days ago. And these further released autopsy results show that these injuries are not consistent with an accident, according to Dr. Rakowski. And it doesn't even take a doctor, once I tell you all of the injuries that were to this man's head, it doesn't take a doctor to know that this could not have been a slip and fall in the shower or the bathroom, or even rolling out of bed and hitting your head on a marble side table. This is drastic injuries. So these are all the things he suffered. 1, abrasion to the posterior scalp. That makes sense. Whenever you hit your head, a lot of times you will have an abrasion there. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I'm sorry about my pronunciation of some of these words. Subgaleal hemorrhage underlying the abrasion. So now that's a blood collection in the 3rd layer of the scalp. This is usually due to severe and direct blows to the head. Now that was directly under the abrasion. Okay, so that makes sense. However, he also had, so that's 2 things. Here's the 3rd thing, a linear fracture of the base of the skull. Now this is where it gets sus, because it's a type of injury that only comes with a severe blow to the skull. The base of the skull is buried deep within the head and protected by the muscles and tissues layers of the upper neck. So, I mean, to get to the base of the skull, you are having to go through a lot. It's buried deep back in there, and, you know, you've got a lot of things in the way. So, to protect it, and that's how the body is made. So, the force involved with a fracture, such as this type of basal fracture, as they call it, it's not typical of a ground level fall. It's not something people would get from slipping and falling in the shower. It would be very rare for this type of injury to happen, you know, in this doctor's opinion. So next he had a comminuted fracture. I'm sorry, you guys. So sorry. Comminuted fracture of the roofs of the orbits involving the bilateral frontal bone. Okay, so that's the eyes. That's around the eyes, and this injury further attests the incredible force behind this injury. This is where a bone is broken into several different pieces rather than just a single fracture. And this occurred in the bony outlets surrounding his eyes. So this is not just a fracture, you know, over an eye or whatever. Literally, his eye sockets were fractured in pieces. I'm sorry, my phone is doing dumb shit again. I cannot wait to be able to get some better equipment so I can create higher quality videos for you guys. You're just gonna have to bear with me for a few more weeks. It's all coming. So far this shows that he suffered forceful blows to both the front and back of his skull. So how are you slipping and falling and not only cracking the back of your skull, but you're also basically shattering your eye sockets? Like, this is not something that happens in the shower, you know? And to take into account that he had no drugs or alcohol in his system either. So it's not like he's stumbling around drunk and falls and kind of, you know, this is just not making sense to me. I don't know about you, but it's not making sense to me. He also had bilateral partial periorbital ecchymoses, which is bruises around the eyes, consistent with the 2 previous findings. So they also call it raccoon eyes. And this can be caused by either of the 2 previous injuries. Obviously, if you injure the front of your face, you can get the black eyes there. And sometimes if you injure the back of your head hard enough, it can actually cause the brain to shift forward and hit the base of, or the front of your skull as well, causing the black eyes. But either one, direct blows to the face or severe blow to the back of the head, would be so forceful. It would have to be so forceful enough for your brain to literally slam into the front of your head and cause your eyes to bruise. He also, now we're going to go into, this is the next one listed as the subdural hematoma, which we already know is a blood collection that forms between the surface of the brain and its protected outer covering. So we already know about that, and then that swelling happens, and if you don't get that relieved, you will go into coma and pass away. So then now next, he also had a subarachnoid hemorrhage. This is one of the most common brain injuries, and it can also be caused by a stroke. So this was aside from the other injuries, there was also this small subarachnoid hemorrhage in a different part of his head. He also had contracoup contusions involving the bilateral frontal lobes and bilateral temporal lobes, typically called ricochet phenomenon, when something causes the brain to smash side to side or front to back of the left or right of the skull, front to back of the skull. And this is seen when the brain is hit in high impact with significant force. So we're talking, you're hit on this side of the head, and it could be a boxer type injury, but for all of these things together, it's just not consistent with an accident or a slip and fall at all. Not a ground level fall, at least. He would have had to fall some stories down for something like this to happen. Not blood thinners. Blood thinners can't cause the injuries, the shattering of the orbital bones, or any of that. So Dr. Rakowski says that he has only seen this type of head trauma in car or motorcycle accidents, or falls from great heights. So, jumping off of a building onto concrete, or which is another case I would like to talk about, is the Chesley Chris case. But the type of injury that Bob Saget had, it wasn't a slip and fall in the bathroom. It wasn't a slip and fall in the bathroom. It wasn't a fall from the bed. It wasn't a padded, cushioned headboard. Something happened to this man. And, I don't understand. Also, according to this neurosurgeon, when the security came in and said that it didn't look like there was any sign of foul play or anything like that, when they saw him, the injuries that he had, and the fact that he was cold to the touch, they said, and he had no pulse, so he had clearly been dead for a bit. I mean, long enough to be cold. He would have been bruised. He would have looked, they would have known right away that it was some sort of head trauma. He would have looked like he got his butt kicked. It wouldn't have looked like he just peacefully went in his sleep, according to this doctor. So, I don't know. I'll leave you guys with that. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you will. And I will talk to you guys later when I have some other stuff for you. I might talk about Chesley Chris, because, that's another one that's a little questionable. But we'll see. I also got a ton of other stuff in the works for you guys, so I will have that to you shortly. Have a great day, and talk to you later.